Presentation part has to do with the camera. Should I pause for a moment or are we good? Okay, let's talk about the video. Okay, well, let's go ahead and just start with a couple announcements. Welcome everybody at home. Lots of people on Zoom out there. So welcome all of you at Zoom. You are kind of the audience tonight. So those of you back at home. If we can't get to your questions, please forgive us. We might be tied up in here, but we are so glad that you're joining us out there. So thank you. Welcome everybody. A couple announcements. There are bathrooms in the house. At any point, if you need to use the restroom, you can just feel free to go ahead and go take care of that and do that. Can we do a little double check of our phones and make sure all the phones are off? All right. So let's just double check our phones, everybody. Okay. So am I good to go, Scott? Okay, beautiful. Okay, so welcome everybody. We have every side of
Right here.
We're working out some kinks.
No pressure.
It's all good. We're cool for y'all. So we have every side represented here tonight. We have people in recovery. We have family members who have loved ones in recovery. We have family members who have loved ones still struggling in actual addiction. We have family members that have lost a loved one due to overdose. And then we have friends that are here to support their close friends and family that are in any of those categories. So we have everybody represented. We're so glad you're here tonight. Leading the conversation will be Art Dahlen, the founder and visionary of Battlefield Addiction. He is the owner and creator of Legal Recovery. Not only a treatment provider, Art is a highly effective family and recovery coach who has led thousands of family members and individuals through strategic intervention for the past 13 years. His 17 years in active addiction equipped him to lead families and their addicted loved ones out of the woods and into long-term recovery. His work has attracted a substantial following from all walks of life. His straightforward approach and wisdom from his lived experience has gained him much respect in the addiction recovery field and continues to gain more and more attention from city officials and organizations needing assistance and guidance with the issue. So tonight is a series of conversations led by Art, where we are inviting political candidates into our Battlefield addiction community to share our experiences with and learn more about and from. So let me preface with this: Battlefield Addiction and Legal Recovery endorses no party or political candidates. We are inviting all candidates into our community forum and letting the issue be talked about in a bipartisan manner. This issue is very serious to all of us, and we must have solutions. We are open to all good solutions, no matter where they come from. So with that, let me introduce you and tell you a little bit about our speaker tonight, who is in the hot seat. Washington State Senator Mark Mullet, who is running for governor. Mark is from Issaquah, born and raised in Tukwila, and he graduated from Foster High School in 1990. He grew up in a neighborhood where he saw the harmful impacts of drug addiction firsthand. Mark owns Zeke's Pizza and 4 Ben & Jerry's ice cream stores.
Making friends already.
You have a connection. His wife Kelly is an Issaquah school teacher, and they have 6 children, ranging in ages from 14 to 21. Mark's campaign for governor has public safety improvements as a priority. Mark was the sponsor and champion of Senate Bill 5536 in the 2023 session that has accountability for people possessing and using drugs in public. Mark feels strongly that not a penny of state tax dollars should go towards enabling people to use drugs, but he does want the state to step up financially to make sure we are supporting all efforts to help people beat their drug addictions. Mark has been in the state Senate for the past 12 years and currently chairs the state construction budget. He has prioritized investments to expand both mental health and substance abuse treatment facilities across our states. So here, for us to have a meaningful and solution-driven conversation, welcome Washington State Senator Mark Mullet.
Hey. Oh, all right. The coffee. All right.
I'm boring him already.
Okay, the first thing I wanna dig into, Mark, is, I want, over the past 12 years being in the Senate, but knowing the obstacles of pushing bills through and what you've had to deal with. Can you, the question is two things. One, can you explain what you see currently happening in the Senate? And then what are the difficulties that you've had in pushing bills through that hold addiction, crime and drug addiction accountable?
Yeah, I think. It kind of came at us out of left field in 2021 session. While we were in session, our Supreme Court came out with a decision called the Blake decision. So the Blake decision was Supreme Court basically, through that decision, legalized the possession of drugs in the state of Washington. And so it wasn't like a bill passed that changed the playing field. It just got changed through a court decision. And then it was incumbent on the legislature to actually fix that decision. So that was sort of, I will admit, when I got to the Senate, when I got elected in 2012, substance abuse treatment wasn't like this thing that was front and center as my top priority of why I ran for the Senate. It kind of was something I felt I ended up having to focus on because of the court decision. And then I was surprised when that decision came down. We went into the Senate Democratic Caucus room. There was all these people celebrating. And I was like, what the hell are you guys celebrating? They're like, well, we just finally ended the war on drugs in the state of Washington. It's been decriminalized.
Now, when you say all these people celebrating,
I'm talking about Senate Democrats. And we're
Senate
happy that, this Supreme Court decision, and this is, to be honest, you're really focused of how I ended up in the governor's race. I was in a fight with our Attorney General Bob Ferguson because he was looking at Oregon, who had done it through initiative in 2020 to decriminalize. He was looking at what British Columbia was doing up north, who had also chosen the same path as Oregon. And he was like, this is what Washington needs to do. Like the Supreme Court has given us a gift. Like we need to embrace this gift and we need to decriminalize possession of drugs. And I was like, I think you're nuts. And so all of a sudden I started dropping bills. And so basically for the 21, 22, and 23 session, this became my big priority in the Senate was finding a bipartisan solution. Because we think treatment's essential, but I think it's hard to get people into treatment. There's not some accountability for people who use drugs. And so we think, and I saw an article in the paper this week. I mean, British Columbia, I think, is officially disaster of what they've done. I think Oregon has actually switched course already. And so I'm really glad that I chose to dig in and have this fight against Attorney General and other members on the left wing of that political spectrum.
has anyone that was celebrating, of those folks, ever admitted to any oops?
I haven't heard it. I think people, like specifically in the governor's race, Attorney General Ferguson now says he does support the bill that I helped pass, in that 23 session, the Senate Bill 5536. But I think he only said that because he did a bunch of polling, I think, this spring and realized he was on the wrong side of the voters. I mean, so I think there's still this contingent that feels on the left. I think it's the extreme left wing of the spectrum that, we should have gone this route. But I will say the fact that Oregon has switched course, I think was really helpful. You even have kind of these extreme members on the left community side realize it just didn't work. Like giving people a brochure and expecting them to follow up and get treatment.
Right.
We learned that Oregon wasn't happening.
So what about other bills? I've heard about the Pill Press Act. Were you there for that? Do you understand what that was?
No, yeah, walk me through, what was that one exactly?
Okay, well, the Pill Press Act was that they were going to, Inslee signed it 23, and this was we're gonna target the press of the pill, the machine. So we're gonna actually make greater penalties for the machine that presses the pills. And, these kind of, how does something like that get, and I know that they did that because it was something to do with the children looking like cereal and that kind of thing, but I just wonder were you there for something like that? Do you understand why they did that? And why would they do something so irrelevant? I mean,
I guess my recollection of that bill was it didn't really have much controversy. It kind of sailed through the process. I
Right.
thought it just had bipartisan support. I think somebody just wanted to have a press conference to say they were doing something.
right.
Was my sense. For that bill passed. I don't know if it was a meaningful.
Well, I think that these are the type of problems that we're dealing with because those type of bills that sail through, maybe they're not that smart. I mean, like even number one is who cares? So if somebody gets caught with 100 pounds of fentanyl and you go, oh, well, they have a pill press machine, so we're gonna really get them. It's like they got 100 pounds of fentanyl, why don't you just get them with the fentanyl? Right? It's like saying, we've passed a law against Ziploc baggies. No, we're gonna really target the cocaine dealers, we're gonna get them on the Ziploc baggie. Well, they're gonna bring it in their hands. So what happens with things like that is that all of a sudden now we have these people in the audience, maybe you didn't know why you're doing straight powder. And maybe we don't know that affected us in that way, that we went from a pill press machine to like, but see, then there's the other thing, and I heard you talking about this in your interview about how we alert criminals. When we pass the new law, we alert criminals. And you were talking about, explain this to me, you were talking about the chase and pursuit law.
This was the police pursuit law, and this is where the legislature, I think, screwed up, and you just have to. I think this is your challenge in human nature in general. Is gotta be willing to admit when you screw something up. But I live in Issaquah, a lot of jurisdictions in King County have pretty restrictive police pursuit laws that criminals didn't realize that. So if they got pulled over, they always stay pulled over because they're going back to watching, chips or whatever. And they don't want getting chased after by the Strata or whatever. But it was
Right.
But the reality is, when it was on the front page of the paper that the legislature has passed a bill to restrict police pursuits, all of a sudden everyone knew about it, and that's why we had to fix that issue right away, because we no longer had compliance. People got pulled over of just actually doing what they're supposed to do, which is stay pulled over and let the police.
Because they knew that the laws were restricted.
And they knew the laws were less restrictive, and so that finally, we did a what I call kind of a half fix in the 23 session. That was like pulling teeth. That was a tough fix to get through, but the much better fix was the initiative. We got signatures on the initiative. I supported the initiative. We passed it this session. It doesn't have to now go to the voters. It's already become law. We've gone back to how it was before, which is you have, local jurisdictions can decide what police pursuit policies they want to have.
Yeah.
And I'm very optimistic that we're going to go back to getting that compliance again.
I see. But you had to openly kind of admit, oops, we've alerted the public to.
And that's what I think is interesting is I feel like for me, that epiphany, that law went live in July of 21. I was meeting with the police chiefs in the cities I represent, like it's probably Valley, Swami. I was like, holy crap, we really screwed this up.
Yeah.
And so I came into that January 22 session with a fix saying, hey, we gotta raise our hand and admit this was a huge giant mistake. And so it's tough to do that, because I think every elected official never wants to admit they screwed something up. But at the same time, everyone's human, and so sometimes it's second to those mistakes and fix them as quick as you can.
So you guys am I imagining a world where you guys are all in the Senate together, just got, oh shit, this is what we did? Or is it just someone like you going and everyone's else,
Well, this was on this specific police pursuit bill. We got down to the 22 session, the last day of session, and I was like, we gotta vote on this bill. We can't leave town without voting on it. And I got out. My colleagues didn't want to vote on it.
Right.
So that's why I didn't pass in the 22 session. In the 23 session, the chair of the committee, Monica Bingram, chairs the Law and Justice Committee. It's a little ironic, right? She chairs the committee that's supposed to focus on law and justice.
Right.
She wouldn't let out of her committee. So I actually had to go door to door to 15 Democratic senators to get people to actually sign a letter saying, we want this bill on the floor of the Senate. We know the chair of the committee won't let it out, but we want to have a public discussion and debate on it.
And you have to go to the Democratic senators, but all the Republican senators were already been on it.
They were fine.
I see.
So it was a internal fight for me with my colleagues on the Democratic side.
And you experience a lot of this. I imagine
You're like that bill, so the police pursuit bill passed, 38 to 11, there's 49 senators, so that still means there's 11 Democrats at the end of the day still voting against,
Chasing people.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is, and it was weird, like when I got to the Senate, you never imagine you're gonna have to try to convince your colleagues, police should be out to chase after criminals who are trying to drive away from them. That seemed like an argument, you
Right.
just assume that everyone wouldn't make you have.
Now, okay, the next thing I wanna get into, Ricky's Law a lot, we've been talking about it. And so I'm gonna ask it in a way, well, the first question is. We're talking about mandated treatment, so we're talking about being able to put somebody involuntarily into a treatment and detox facility. A family having a right to do so by getting a provider to come and do an assessment and whatever process it is. But at this point, currently, if you propose a bill to mandate treatment, who opposes that bill?
It's on my side of the aisle. You'd have some challenges still from the same people that oppose the police pursuit bill,
Right,
push back on, but I think you have to, I think, draw that distinction between the civil side, because Ricky's Law is focused on the civil side. This is family member saying, you know, our kid or our loved one needs help, and we want to make sure they get the help that they need. And then the other side is you have the criminal side, and so once someone's now using drugs in public because of the bill we passed last year, the one that I got sponsored, that's in Bill 5536, it's a gross misdemeanor, so they could actually go to jail for a year.
Yeah.
So that's a very different scenario, because now at that point, they're no longer in control of, they're not out free to do whatever they want, they're actually, they could be, you know, in jail.
so are you saying that the liberal side or on your side of the aisle, the Democrats that oppose this are okay with opposing it on the civil side, but they don't want it on?
Well, I think they supported it more on the civil side, they're actually pushing back on the criminal side.
I see.
And so that's been my challenge. The original bill, Senate Bill 5536, as it came off the Senate before it went to the House, it actually had a 45-day minimum, because we were trying to figure out, if you want to give someone a chance to beat their addiction, you can't just have them get arrested and turn around the next day and be back on the streets again. And that's where we got pushed back, and we weren't able to keep that 45-day minimum in that bill to pass. So now it's just the judge's discretion of how long people will have to spend.
You're talking about with Ricky's Law.
I'm talking about Senate Bill 5536, which is the criminal.
Oh, okay, on the criminal side, you were saying you got pushed back because you wanted to hold them too long?
Yes,
And-
people were giving pushback on having a 45-day requirement for people.
And so that didn't go through.
That is not in the current law that passed. You have to, you make proposals of things that you think would be good, and sometimes though, you're better off to take what you can get than nothing at all. So we passed the bill, but it is the judge's discretion now. There is no, we do call mandatory minimum for people using drugs in public. It's completely relying on the judge
Right.
to determine the length of time.
So what I'm trying to get at is, I did a talk last night with people, and the question is, who's opposing mandatory treatment? Where in our law, what side of the aisle is opposing it? And we've concluded, and Mark's kind of let me in, that it is the left and it is the far left. And whether you think it's good or bad, and then I asked Mark privately what the reason was for that.
Well, I think they just feel it's a throwback. Like they looked at the 80s as a disaster in terms of, you know,
The war on drugs.
So they just say we're going back, and I think the big argument is they think it's gonna have. Like the people who end up going to jail will be racially disproportionate, I think, is their main pushback. So that's really where you see it. And so that's why, but on the flip side, this is the challenge the West Coast states have right now.
Yeah.
Is there's really bad unintended consequences. You can say, okay, we feel like there's disproportionate racial impacts if you arrest people who are using drugs. But at the same time, the alternative of not of allowing people to use drugs, well, that's got horrible outcomes, and we've seen that as well. So it's, you know, you got to figure out this balance.
So you correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm gonna say this, and I want you just to correct me if I'm wrong. But what kind of we're saying here is that when we put laws in place for drugs, that now the far left is saying this is racism. You are now targeting a particular population that would suffer from these laws disproportionate to anyone else that will. The problem with that theory is the people using fentanyl are mostly white. Problem one, most of the drug addicts right now are white. So that's problem one. Problem, and you correct me in time. Problem two is if you introduced a bill that said, we want to, this on the same note, if you said, you know what we'd like to do in Washington State, we'd like to punish corporate crime. We would like to punish corporate crime. So anyone doing fraud in the corporate world, we want big jail sentences for, and we want them stopped. Would they say that's racist towards white men? I mean, I'm being honest. Would they say that's racism? You're targeting a population that this would affect mostly white men in their 50s, and we can't be racist.
Yeah, that would not be a, I don't think that issue would come up.
Okay, well, I mean, doesn't it work both ways in that? I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, in that logic, okay, so getting back to Ricky's law, I wanna say that the same people that put these people that put Ricky's law in play, Lauren Davidson, the left, these people now are opposing mandating treatment.
on the criminal side, yes.
So on this, they want to do it on the civil side. They want to hold drug addicts and have their families be able to. Now, the other question I have about Ricky's law is I was looking through the report. It's mostly done for alcoholism. Most of the people that are affected by Ricky's law, and I don't know, do you know if anyone's actually going through the court process? Because we have tons of people out here. Does anyone know anyone that's been ever held on Ricky's law?
I went through all of the motions, and what they told me was, I had to go back and prove a history, a longer history of the current situation that he was in, but they wanted to see a history and a pattern longer than the current situation that he was in, which was really bad, before they would consider offering him the help that was supposedly out there. And knowing that he had overdosed, knowing that he had been in hospitals, we proved hospitals 14 times. We proved 14 times ERs, and had a social worker come in, interview 14 times. Still did not get any help with Ricky's law.
So, and it's my understanding through these reports.
Yeah.
One, that it's targeting the population that's had the most beds due to this are alcoholics, and I wonder how that's grave danger.
Yeah,
I wonder how you were able to prove that with an alcoholic, but not with a person doing fentanyl. And the other thing I'm trying to figure out is when our Senate passes a bill like that, or when we get a bill that's passed like that, we have to educate the public on how to use it. No one knows how to use it.
yeah,
So now we've passed this bill and none of us know how to use it. And there's no education on how to use it. So now what we're running into is, well, great, there's a Ricky's law, but none of us that are really affected by it. In fact, none of the family that we've ever met, and we do thousands and thousands of families in South King County, and we have no one that could ever use it.
and I think if you look at the numbers, like in the reports I sent Art, because he brought this up with me, I think on Tuesday, so I went to nonpartisan staff this week to try to gather whatever information I could on Ricky's law and how it's working. I think there's only about 55 beds online, and they're only getting
20 or 50% capacity.
50% utilization.
Sure.
It's not, and I mean, I'll give you my number afterwards. Because I would like to hear from people who try to use it and had difficulty, because that's the feedback I can give the DSHS, Department of Social Health and Service Agency. I think it would be good for them to hear some real feedback of where it's letting people down.
Yeah.
But I think if you were to be critical, I think that where the legislature do a lot better is they pass a law like that, they pat themselves on the back, saying we're helping people suffering from substance abuse treatment. But this is a challenge. There's not really good oversight from the governor's office of making sure these laws are achieving the outcomes they were intended to achieve. People want the press conference, they want the ribbon cutting from the bill passing. It's not as sexy, but I will say my experience as a business owner is a lot of the things, like when I empty the grease trap at Ben and Jerry's, it's not very sexy. But if you don't empty the grease trap, your sink overflows. And so it's just, I think you need some oversight in Olympia to make sure these laws that have good intentions are actually being followed through to deliver for families.
Yeah.
They can actually utilize, and that's where I think we're dropping the ball right now.
Well, and even the announcement of the Pill Press Act, I mean, I was just imagining a drug dealer. You know, he's sitting there pressing pills and he looks up and like, he's surely watching Inslee on his press conference. You know, he's got a lot of time. He's just sitting there pressing pills. He's like, oh, shit, Inslee says we can't have a pill press anymore. You know, like Inslee didn't tell him he couldn't have fentanyl. You know, the guy's like, oh, shit. And he just throws his pill press out. Like, give me a break. You know, and that's, of course it passes because it's nonsense. It goes through because it's nonsense and it's a good announcement, but it has no impact on anyone here, no impact on anyone at all. And then Inslee's shaking, you know, patting himself on the back for that. And we're all still like, well, wait, now they went to straight powder maybe, because at very best what it did was it took the pill press out. So now you guys are all going to get straight powder because nobody wants to be held on a pill press. So they're, you know, now it's even more deadly because now you're smoking more powder than you were. And here we go. And these unintended consequences of not seeking proper guidance to what's going on.
I will say, and I will seriously, I'll give you my number before I forget, but my hope here, what I've learned from, you know, Art and I just met last month, you guys in the room know 10 times more about this than I know. And so I go to things like this with the goal of listening so I can understand the issue better. I'm not even going to pretend for half a second I understand these issues, these challenges as well as you guys do. But that's my hope tonight when I leave, that I will get feedback on things that should be working better and currently don't work.
So Mark, now is moving to governor, what is the difference between being able to make an impact in the Senate? And then how does it increase your power as governor?
You get, the budget is really, the big change is the governor's priorities are in his budget. And these priorities are, like, he wants hybrid electric cars. You know, so his priorities are around things on that front. And this is the fundamental difference, is the governor gets to put out that framework about, you know, our state operating budget is $72 billion. Like,
And you've been in charge of the budget.
and I do the state construction budget, so I'm in charge of the state construction budget.
Yeah.
That's a little smaller, that's $4 or $5 billion, still a lot of money, but and that's everything we build. The operating budget is like, my wife's a teacher and so her payroll comes through the state operating budget. That's where you, as a governor, put out your priorities. And so if you're gonna prioritize public safety, and this is an example, like I was frustrated, like, so I did a bill this last session that ended up is now law. Where we used to make cities and counties pay a portion of the cost for their officers to go train at Marion, the Criminal Justice Training Academy on First Avenue, so they can become officers, and cities and counties are all broke. So I was like, well, this seems ridiculous. If the state used to pay for all of those costs, let's go back, have the state pay for all those costs, so no city or county who wants to hire a police officer is factoring in, oh, I'm gonna pay a little extra money for them to go to Marion to get trained.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, well, the state's paying for it, so all the time. So there's things like that where you prioritize that in your budget framework. You make it easier for cities and counties to hire police officers. And you prioritize and say, we're gonna have the state financially provide money to cities and counties. They're gonna help people beat their addiction. Because it can be expensive, right? You can be talking $7,000 to $10,000 that you want to shell out if you want to get someone in the program to really beat their addiction.
Right.
The state can do that. I mean, the state, through their budget priorities, has the ability to do that, but when the money gets promised to other groups, powerful special interest groups, a lot of those special interest groups will donate a lot of money to Democrats running for office. Like, it's hard to get the money away from that. Right?
So are you telling me that the budget comes down from the governor,
And then the legislature gets to tweak it,
but not much?
but the governor's framework kind of sets the table for us.
So we're taking a thing where if we don't know why we don't have any money for treatment, but then we do have money for these ferries. Is that what?
We got money for a lot of other things.
Yeah, and then there's no money for, okay, I get it.
And I'll say, this is the challenge, right? Like, I came to the Senate from the Issaquah City Council. All this stuff's happening at the local level. And so what we really need to do is we need to send out money to cities and counties with strings attached. It can't just be a blank check, like saying, hey, you're gonna have a local program that's gonna help people beat their drug addiction. send us the bill, I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
And we're on board with that. But you know who gets the press conference then? It's the local mayor, who gets the press conference. It's not the guy sitting in Olympia.
Right.
And this is what we have to overcome.
So you don't
All
want,
these public safety challenges are happening at the local level. They need financial support. Like when I got to the Senate, the first budget I voted on was, 2013, it was a $34 billion budget. As I just said, the budget we passed in March was $72 billion. So in that short amount of time, in a 12-year window, our budget more than doubled in the state of Washington, yet we don't have any ability to give cities and counties more money so they can help people beat their drug addiction.
where do you hypothesize that most of that money went?
It goes to a variety of places. So I call it the abyss of the state general fund. That I just think you have to make this the priority, but yes, when you do that, you're acknowledging that there's gonna be mayors and city council members that will go in the news and talk about all the good work they're doing. Even though you're the one that's making it happen by being a financial partner for them. But that is basically people kind of having to put their ego aside and say, okay, we're gonna do what's right from a public policy perspective, and we may never get credit for it.
Right. I want to talk about the 4 Seattle Times interviews. There was 4 Seattle Times interviews. The op-ed section of the Seattle Times interviewed all 4 governor candidates, Mark being one of them. And I do want to say that I've watched all 4 extensively, and Mark's was by far the most qualified, most knowledgeable of money. Do you ever find that you're kind of like, when you hear people say they're programmed to do this, do you ever find yourself like, what are you even talking about? Like, there's no money for that? Or do you ever find yourself like that when you haven't understood the money and somebody's talking out of the side of their neck about maybe what they're gonna do, and you're like, how are you gonna pay for that? Like,
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
This is, and I mean, I say, like, here's an example, and I think this part of it comes from being a small business owner. Like I say, there's 29 Senate Democrats. I'm the only small business owner in that room. But like I discovered, like some of these substance use treatment facilities have horrible reimbursement rates through Medicaid. They suck. But what's interesting is tribal facilities, they get reimbursed through the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It could be 5x of what you get from Medicaid. So in my state construction budget, we started pushing out a lot of money for these tribal facilities that do substance use treatment, mental health treatment, because it is a way to expand access without having to create a budget problem. And so I think just that mentality change would be really beneficial, looking for every opportunity you have to expand access.
well, that being said, why isn't it true? If we look at how easy it is, say, for any of these people to go to a state insured dentist. Right, we have that, right? I don't think anyone's, I mean,
Health, yeah.
yeah, I mean, we do have that though, and they can go to a state insured doctor and everything, and, but why aren't we talking about raising the reimbursement rates for drug treatment on the state Apple level and bring in the free market?
Well, I think this goes back to the priorities, right? You have to make that your priority. And so this is the advantage where I think it's change in leadership in the governor's office. You can start to prioritize what those rates will be to get more people.
But isn't it cheaper?
To providing treatment.
But why, but it seems like our state would rather go, well, we'll put a state facility or we'll put all this, we have to pay this money. You don't have to pay the money if you just raise the reimbursement rates in Medicaid. I mean, yeah, you have to put more into the reimbursement rates, but the free market's gonna come in and do the building. They're gonna come in and want a business that makes money, and if they could get enough for, you know, if it was 1,000 a day rather than 300 a day for inpatient or whatever they're doing, that would bring in builders. It would bring in, we wouldn't have to pay for the facility to get built, right? I mean, is that thinking not there, or?
I think it's, I mean, I think there's a lot, like, and I think you kind of explained this to me when we met last month, but it was kind of an eye-opening thing for me to hear. Like I say, I think you guys understand this issue better than I do. I think better than a lot of the people currently in Olympia do. So part of that's just that educational effort of really saying, okay, if you do this, trust me, they will come. Build it, they will come. And I think, so if people realize there's gonna be a business model that actually pencils out, I think you'll get more people willing to actually operate in that space.
I mean, to me, if we're gonna provide insurance to people and say you can go to the doctors on this insurance, or you can go to treatment on this insurance, or you can go to the dentist on this insurance. Then we have to be smart enough to go, well, is anyone gonna build a dentist office on this reimbursement rate? And if we're not, then we're going, why don't we have enough dentists? Well, it's pretty simple. You don't pay them enough through the state insurance for them to build a dentist office. It's that simple, and that's the same way with treatment. It's like, why don't we have enough treatment beds? Duh. You don't pay enough reimbursement rates. No one's gonna build it. The free market can't help you. So now everything you do is gonna have to be funded. You're gonna have to fund it anyways through your own.
And I think there's an opportunity. This would be a little outside the box, but if you go to the criminal side, so someone now is using drugs on Third Avenue in Seattle, they've been arrested. Like, they could be in jail, like, you could partner with private providers on secure substance abuse treatment programs, and they, to your point, they get up and running, and you could then pay them to say, hey, we're gonna provide the reimbursement rate for this person to be in there. So rather than them just walking out of jail the next day, I mean, this was my challenge. I did my ride along with police in Spokane back in the fall. And, you know, we saw this guy overdose on the sidewalk, 6 blocks from the Davenport Hotel in Spokane where I was staying. He got Narcan, so he came back to light. And I said to the EMS guy, I said, hey, that was pretty intense. It seemed like a scene out of Pulp Fiction, right? It was like, I was watching it, like, that was intense. And he's like, I saw that guy last week. I'll see that same guy next week.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is kind of depressing. And that really is where it hit me like a 2x4. Like, these people are not getting into programs. They have a chance in hell.
But
addiction.
Now, hear me out, and this is why maybe I gotta challenge you. Because as the person who was there when Ricky's Law got passed. How do we not have, and you're out there on the street, you see, and you go, oh, well, we got Ricky's Law. Let's get that guy civilly committed right now, because he's overdosing, he's a danger to himself, and he's a danger to others. But if we don't, as the people passing the bills, if we don't understand the bills well enough to utilize them, even being the people that wrote the bills and passed it, then how are we as citizens going to utilize these bills, and what's even the necessary reason to even pass them?
Well, I think Ricky's Law was intended for, I think what your example was, where you have a family member or a loved one who wants to see that person get the help they need. I don't think it was ever written in a way to say an EMS technician could have someone civilly put in. You know, I think it would have to be coming from somebody with that.
We were more than a candidate.
Yeah.
There's too many stipulations put in place that are blockading things. It should have been a straight path.
Yeah,
When you get to that level, there should be a straight path. There's too many roadblocks. So why have something that is readily available to people and then put up a number of roadblocks that takes you, have to jump over all of those roadblocks to get down the path?
Well, now we're talking about why there's only 50% capacity, but I am still, and I'll still look for this answer from you later, Mark. I don't buy it. I still don't buy it that those beds are even being utilized by Ricky's Law. I don't buy it at all. The numbers that they're saying, 1,000 people a year. You're telling me 3 people? I mean, this one facility is saying they took in 7. We from 2022 to 2023, supposedly we've put 794 people in a detox bed due to Ricky's Law. Now, I don't know where the hell that's going on. I don't believe it. I don't buy it for a second that 794 families went through all what she went through and successfully got their kid.
Didn't get it.
And
Didn't get success.
and then especially convincing somebody that's this alcoholic who's just drinking who's on a 30-year progression slope is a danger to himself or others. I don't buy it. And so I would like to
I think it would be our interesting opportunity, I think, in this is, you know, I need to take off my governor candidate hat, put back on my Mark Mullet senator hat.
Yeah.
But we can arrange a meeting with DSHS to go through that, and I think it'd be interesting for them to have to, because I, as a senator, can get them to go to that meeting. You could be in that meeting, and you could challenge them with questions. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't buy it. I'm reading the reports and I'm just like, this is crazy. And if it worked for 794 families, then why didn't it work for 1,500?
Well, and
Why are we
let's
only
make
at
that
half
our-
capacity?
let's
You know?
find our time for next
So-
Friday. Let's see, a week from now, we can get a meeting with these people. We'll do it on Zoom.
I'd appreciate it. I appreciate getting the knowledge of how to utilize the tool that's already there before I get somebody else that's running for Senate telling me they're gonna come up with a new law. Why do we need a new law when we already got one? And I'm also not buying this thing between the left saying, we wanna commit people against their will civilly, but not criminally. It's like all drug addicts commit crimes. What the hell are you even talking about? You know, I mean, so there's a difference. There's a difference between caring about a person and wanting them to get help. Because they committed a crime. We don't want people punished, and we're not trying to hurt people. We're trying to utilize a tool. We're trying to say, hey, if someone commits a crime, we want to utilize a tool to help them. We want to get them the help. And fentanyl is a swift and certain death. And this person committed a crime and they're using fentanyl. And if your loved one was using fentanyl today, wouldn't you want every tool utilized to stop it? And I think that that's the problem. I would like to understand how the people there would feel if their loved one was using fentanyl today. The fear, what you guys go through, the sleeping, the just crazy, insane thoughts. Monica's a prime example of a woman that's here and her son's out using fentanyl today and she's flipped out. And now she could just call someone and get her son in and there's an empty bed today. But we're not being able to utilize that. Why?
It's Friday.
All right.
I gotta make I have my calendar in my head. I know I have an opening
Okay,
Friday morning, so we're gonna make that work.
let's move on to maybe talking about what this state would look like, in your opinion, with Bob Ferguson at the helm.
I mean, like I said, he's the one I was fighting. He was the one pushing us to decriminalize drugs. And so it's hard because now, he's spending millions of dollars to run TV ads saying he cares about public safety because he wants to rewrite history. And that's what I'm hoping that when voters get their ballots in 8 days, so everyone gets their ballots in 8 days. Like, this is what's going to happen. I think you're going to find it's interesting because there's all these different police organizations. Bob has been our top for 12 years. Not one single police organization is endorsing him. Governor. They're all endorsing me, the governor. And part of that is because I at least had the intellectual honesty to raise my hand when we screwed up that pursuit law.
Sure.
And say we screwed it up.
Sure.
And they saw me admit this mistake and they saw me fix it. Like when Bob supported decriminalizing drugs, there was no point. There is no point in any public record of Bob ever saying, wow, I was on the wrong side of the issue. I regret it now.
Right.
He just pretends like he was never on that side of the issue. And so I think this is the ultimate challenge, but it is, I feel like I say to people, I'm pretty transparent. If you want a fourth term of JNZ, you should vote for Bob Ferguson. That's what you will get. You will get a fourth term of JNZ. But if you want to see change, like that's the reason I'm in this race and running. It is, I want to give voters a chance to have a change of direction in the state. You're not going to get it when you're just voting for the establishment candidate who is endorsed by JNZ. And, Inslee and I, it's a unique distinction. I'm the only time in our state's history a governor tried to take out a member of his own party. And that's because I refused to rubber stamp his stuff. Yeah. And so my 2020 Senate race, it was a bloodbath. I mean, Inslee came after me. I got primary from this defund the police group, kind of on the far left. And it was a battle. I mean, 100,000 votes. I won by 58 votes. Wow. So it was tight, but I survived. I think once voters, understood, oh, this is why Mark's coming under attack because he's standing up against some of this left-wing agenda. Inslee wants a rubber stamp. That's, Ferguson is the definition of a rubber stamp. And I think I hope voters understand that you're not going to get any pushback from all these crazy ideas that people in Seattle send to Olympia. To Bob to the governor's office, and I can't ever see him vetoing any of these proposals that come from the powerful Democratic special interest groups. He's just going to pass them and celebrate.
Sure. And can you explain to these guys the primary situation that they're in?
Well, it's a top two. California and Washington are unique states where it doesn't matter your political affiliation. So I don't need to beat Bob Ferguson in 8 days when the ballots show up. I just gotta be in the top two. And so this is our entire focus is how do you try to get into that top two, because then you go to the general election, now there would be no Republicans on the ballot in November. So then if you have a 12-year track record of being really bipartisan and working with both sides of the aisle to solve problems. You know, like I chair the state construction budget, the operating budget passed on a part of my vote. Republicans are like, there wasn't anything in that budget you guys did for me, I'm not voting for it. The state construction budget, like, yeah, Mark came to my community and I told him what project was important to me and then he funded it. So my budget passes 49-0. So I have that advantage in the November general election where I can actually get the bipartisan support. That's how I survived in 2020. I had this coalition kind of take on Inslee that was Democrats, Independents, and Republicans. That's how I survived. So yeah, I lost the far left vote, but I picked up a lot of votes from people elsewhere to get to the finish line. That would be a similar dynamic if I can get out of the primary. We're all of a sudden the general election. You know, Bob Ferguson can't attack me for voting for Trump. You know, he's gonna have to find something different. What
So,
doesn't work?
so correct me if I'm wrong, and you can, and I'm just gonna say my words. What we're saying here is, you know, you can. It's very tough to be a Republican in Washington State. You're gonna lose. And what he's suggesting is, if he don't make it out of the primary, that's because Reichert and Ferguson are gonna not get out of the primary, and then Reichert gets the doors blown off. And Ferguson walks away with it. But if Mark and this is, I'm not endorsing, I'm not saying, I'm just telling you what it looks to be true. If Mark gets out of the primary with Ferguson, he gets the Republican vote and he has a chance, and he gets the moderate vote and he has a chance. But if Ferguson and Reichert come out, it's a walk-off. Is that your
100% accurate, and that's what we're trying to do everything we can. With is, you know, we have 8 days till ballot show up. We want people who want to see change to know the only way you get change is vote for somebody who actually win in November. And that's been my message is you can have, you know, a fiscally conservative Democrat who can actually win in November. And my budget priority is going to be public safety. And I think public safety starts with making sure people have money to beat their drug addiction, because that's at the core of what is our public safety challenge right now. And so, and I think it's, you know, when you have a $72 billion budget, it's a solvable problem. I think there's areas where people say, well, where do you find a lot of this money from? But you look at employment security department right now, it's frustrating to me that we try to keep hiring all these bodies to do all these things, but we live in this state that's like, it's Amazon and Microsoft. This is their headquarters. You go to Colorado, Amazon does Colorado's phone-based app for like their stuff, and you can do a lot of cool stuff in Colorado through your phone. Like in Washington, when you have that same proposal, you get pushback from special interest groups that represent state employees, right? They don't want to use technology to deliver government services because that means they don't have as many cutback members.
Yeah.
And so it's not about laying people off. It's just every year our state budget just assumes you're just going to hire more people. That's the assumption. We call it our maintenance level budget, which assumes automatic headcount growth. Like, to me, nobody's winning. Like, you try to get unemployment insurance filed, you're sitting on the phone for 6 hours trying to get some human being to pick up. Well, meanwhile, you can buy airline tickets, you can order coffee, you can do everything on your phone. Like, this is something you should be able to do on your phone. So not only would you be delivering services at a lower cost, your customer, your Washington State resident would actually be a hell of a lot happier because they wouldn't spend hours upon hours on hold with unemployment security, trying to figure out how to get their benefits. And so there is so many opportunities, I think, if you just had a change in the governor's office of how you're gonna manage this very large state budget, deliver services in a way that's cost effective, actually can, you know, not only save you money, but deliver services in a much smarter approach. And other states are doing it. And they're using our companies in our backyard to do it.
Right. All right, let's open it up for anyone's questions on Zoom. Nico, if they come in, let me know. Miss Kate?
So, why would anybody, like, I don't know, oh, okay. Why would anybody, like any drug addict in theory, choose to get sober or like be a productive member of like society, like by getting a job and stuff like that, when. I don't know, I have met homeless people who make more money like being homeless and getting high than I do like working like.
Is that true?
Yes, yes, because and like,
How do they, just from people giving them money, you mean, or?
no, from like, what, seriously, so like unemployment, so like my parents, like they're small business owners and stuff, and people will purposely like. Cut back on hours so that they can get like EBT and they'll make more money, you know, not working. A couple extra hours than they would if they, you know, took on the 10 hours, they're making more money, and then. You know, my mom and my dad sit on the phone for hours, you know, battling, like, them trying to file for unemployment and stuff, which comes out of, you know, their pockets. When they were, you know, trying to be like, no, they were fired for a reason, because people don't wanna work, how do you create a workforce? And you can get people sober if they're, you know,
If the services are so available and giving.
Yeah, no, you're bringing up an excellent point. Yeah, this is our battle, we're gonna have to have, right, in this state this is the drawback, I think, of. You want a safety net that's there for people that deserve to have it, because life has happened. But if you're not careful, people will abuse that safety net. And this is the balancing act, I don't think we're getting right. In the state of Washington, and, you know, I saw it during COVID, they had to enhance federal unemployment benefits during COVID where. And it was hard, if I own a pizza restaurant, like, you know, my pizza restaurant was open. My Ben and Jerry's in Bell Square was closed, because the whole mall was closed. So I went to my pizza restaurant every single night, because it was busy, people couldn't eat out, but they didn't want to cook, so they're ordering a lot of pizza. I'm working side by side with my staff, we're all dripping in sweat. And then they're talking, like you said, to their friends who are sitting at home, fucking unemployment, making more money than they are, sweating their ass off, you know, next to an oven that's at 550 degrees. And it is, this is a challenging dynamic, and I think we learned during COVID with all that enhanced support. That there was a lot of people that will not work if they can just get money for not working, and this is our challenge, is you wanna have that safety net. Support for someone who loses a job through no fault of their own. But once people are abusing the system, like I have a weird example, like as a small business owner, this is my frustration. I can tell people are checking a box and they apply for jobs because they apply for a job and work in a pizza restaurant. I literally go there at 3 o'clock in an afternoon, you know, I set my whole day around doing the job interview. Then you're sitting there and they don't show up. It happens over and over. And I just wish there was a way to actually have a database to tell the Employment Security Department, hey, this guy's abusing the system. Like, I'm not saying you should do something for one time for a no-show, but if you have a system where every business owner is allowed to report people that schedule a job interview and then peace out, like you could see the pattern, and then they could actually direct their resources to actually go after the people that, based on those reports, trying to game the system. And so, but I will say, I've sponsored that bill, it did not pass. And so it would be one of those things where if I was in charge of the state agency, I wouldn't need a bill. I could just say, hey, all right, state agency has a new policy. Like, we're gonna create a website where business owners can report people who are scheduling interviews and just not showing up. And we're not saying that it's gonna ding them the first time, but if it happens 3 times in a row, we're gonna spend a lot more time when that person's claiming they want unemployment insurance to actually challenge them of whether or not they're really seriously looking for a job or not.
yeah, but. One more comment, a couple minutes ago, you had said like, oh, you know, home of Amazon, we could make, instead of sitting on the phone for 6 hours, you know, unemployment, boom, click the boxes. In those 6 hours, minimum wage here is like $16, you could have, you know, been doing something productive. Maybe if we make it like longer, or, you know, more checks and balances. I understand like being able to get people to access the benefits, but the benefits are like being handed out like candy, like.
Well, and I think the hope with a phone-based employment security system would be that there's people who clearly, like, it's a mutually agreed upon thing where the employer has let the state know, I've laid this person off because I ran out of work for them. And so there are a lot of ones that happen that there is no dispute, like as a small business owner, I get people who file like, you have people obviously who do things completely inappropriate, like they're using racial slurs at work or whatever, they get fired. And then they file for unemployment insurance, and so those are the ones that probably wouldn't work on the phone-based app, because I, as a business owner, am challenging the fact that they're claiming they just were let go for lack of work. I had plenty of work, like I'm looking for workers. They got let go because, they said something completely inappropriate to a fellow staff member, and it just created a hostile work environment. So I think those are the challenges where there'd be examples where a phone-based system would work. There'd be other ones where it wouldn't work. And the key is just get things out of the queue that could basically be done a lot simpler, would be my hope. But trust me, there's no part of me that wants to make it easier for people to abuse the safety net, because I think through my experience at Zeke's and Ben and Jerry, it's really frustrating to see.
All right, Logan, what's the question?
It's more like a suggestion or comment. Art kind of does this with his rebuild crew. You're talking about like forcing treatment or like ways to like rehabilitate us, in society. And I live up in Des Moines. There's this huge property with a huge yard that needs irrigation, needs trimmed or trees trimmed. The roof is bad. It's like 4 stories. It's huge. I don't even know what the property's called, but it's fenced around. It's empty. It's vacant. And I can't help but wonder, like why aren't we talking about like trade schools, right? And you're talking about mandatory treatment for criminals that have gone to jail. Well, like, can we bypass the jail system that sucks? It doesn't really do anything super productive. And put these people in these vacant properties that need maintenance and fixing, and teach them like life skills that they can take.
It's racist, Logan.
And
so I'd like to.
It's not like plurals of people that live in neighborhoods and don't want these people around. I get that, but like you want to build like light rail systems and ferries and like rip out places like this place I'm talking about to put a fucking parking garage, like.
well, and I think, and there are, as the chair of the state construction budget, I go to all the state prisons. So I'll say when I was last at Walla Walla State Penitentiary, like Walla Walla has a program through Walla Walla Community College where you get trained to be an electrician. And it is interesting because you're in jail, but you go through this electrician apprenticeship program. And it is interesting because I asked them, well, how many of these people are getting hired when they get out? And they said every single one is getting hired. And so, and it is, Logan, I guess there has been some examples right now that's happening. I don't think it's in the paper very much, but to your point, within the prison system, whether you're in Monroe or you're in Walla Walla, we can actually have those apprenticeship programs right now, and it actually massively reduces the recidivism rate if you have those programs. Part of that is getting people to get over the fact, like, why are we doing so much to help people who committed the crime and are sitting in prison? But the flip side is, if you're trying to rehabilitate people, those apprenticeship programs work really well. And you could expand those. They do exist right now, and the ones that exist are extremely successful. The building you're talking about in Des Moines, I can't speak to that. I mean, I guess I grew up born and raised in Tukwila. Is it right off 99 sort of, or where is it at?
It's like Marine View Drive.
Oh, yeah, okay. No?
And
Are you talking about the big mansion?
yeah.
Yeah.
My mom is saying, it's file in here, some old folks.
Yeah.
Okay, we have
Okay, we get.
So I'd like to, Logan, I'd like to argue your point just a little bit. So I don't think you can take an addict off the street as an active addiction and say, here, you're gonna go work on this house and help tear it down and rebuild it when they're an active addiction. They're gonna go, yeah, great, I'll go there, and then boom, they're out getting their next door.
Yeah.
There has to be a step in between. And my personal experience with my son is the only time he got clean was when he got locked up. And he got in jail, he got locked up, he went through a horrible detox in jail and came out of the detox thinking, my life sucks, I need help. But without that time out, it's not gonna work. So when I hear, minimum sentences for people, especially repeated offenders, if there's a crime involved, it's the best thing you can do for them. But then you have to have the support program and a program like Logan's talking about, and have sober living lined up for them, and have all the next steps after they come out, because you just can't lock them up and let them
Well,
out.
I guess, and my thing, and you guys, I don't have to get this now, but it would be nice, helpful to know is. It could be in jail, you have something there to help people get through that withdrawal crisis in a way. That's a little more humane than just saying, suck it up and deal with it, right? And so I think, to me, that'd be really interesting to look at. You know, what that looks like, and I think, because one option is state, like we were talking about, get outsourced and you utilize some of the private sector as long as they have secure facilities to say. We're gonna put people in there as they're going through that really challenging active withdrawal phase to make sure they get through it in a way that maybe isn't quite so challenging. Or you could do it within the walls, like the electrician thing I'm talking about, Wall State Penitentiary, they don't need the prison, that they're coming in, there's a classroom in there, I saw the classroom, and so there's opportunities, I think. Within our current system, whether you're in Walla Walla or Monroe, to actually have services inside that building that could help people deal with that, and I don't know, that'd be an interesting thing to pursue. I don't know if there's a state, I should know this, and I'm just admitting I don't. There's a state that's figured out how to have people, if they're incarcerated, challenging symptoms of withdrawal, like what's the best way to help people get through that.
Gotta get it before they get to prison.
I think Boston has something similar.
Do they?
I believe. You're sentenced to jail, and then it's mandatory rehab of some sort.
Oh, okay. I will say, I think the New England Democrats are doing a better job than the West Coast Democrats. Because, I don't know, it's not, I mean, when I walk around like Boston and Chicago, like their streets don't look like our streets. And I'm like, we're all democratic states, like when are we gonna start to admit the West Coast version of liberalism is not working out as well as the New England version?
Well, I haven't heard
Midwest
Chicago's doing that though.
Well, Chicago streets, I didn't see as much as
But they're
Chicago.
killing each other. Aren't they? Yeah. There was like 100 shootings last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad example.
I got a question. My name's Dalton. So every day I go to work and I look over the bridge. I believe it's in downtown Auburn. Okay, right next to this Denny's, there appears to be, and this is just out of general curiosity, there appears to be a homeless camp there. That's not only seems to be exclusive, but looks like it's being monitored by the state. So I was just
What are
wondering.
you talking about right down here, Logan? The refugee
Yeah.
camp? Yeah. It's a
I was
refugee.
just wondering if you knew why they're there and what the goal is for that.
It's right down here in Kent. It's next to the hotel. There's Somalian refugees. And,
Is that what they were? Yeah, right by
I
the.
believe
hotel.
there's Somalian or refugees and there's a camp right here. If you go down 167, you look where the Denny's is on.
What is it, a state sponsor?
I don't know. There is like a checkpoint to get in it.
They were in hotels during COVID and then they kicked them out and now they put up tents for them, they even monitoring it because they don't have the funding to for them in the building.
South side of Central and 167.
Oh, okay.
Huge.
Well, Dalton, I'm not aware of that, the facility you're referencing, I wasn't aware of, the biggest one on our radar screen in Olympia has been that Riverton Church in Tukwila, by where I grew up, where a lot of the people coming in end up at that Riverton Church out military in Tukwila. We actually did put money in the state budget to try to figure out how to, what the hell to do with all the people that were there. It's challenging. Some of the stuff on that immigrant side it's our court system, like they come in as asylum people, and if they're not allowed to legally work, and if it takes them 3 years to get through the asylum process in the court system, what the hell are they supposed to do? And so I think our challenge with some of the people who come here seeking asylum is I have a court system that's quick, if it in 3 months they can get a court date, and if they can stay, they can stay. Now they got a work permit, they'll work. I mean, I've hired immigrants and Zeeks and Ben and Jerry, some of my best workers have been immigrants. But if they can't stay, then they're gone. But we can't have this like 3-year limbo right now, because I think it creates kind of the situation like you're describing, where there's people here who they don't know where to put them. And right now, evidently, I wasn't aware of this spot, but evidently they're down there, and I know we have the same problem at Willow with that Riverton Church property.
Does anyone raise their hand on Zoom, Nico?
I was gonna check my messages.
There was.
Okay, while he's checking that, oh, sorry, it's a thing. Sherry said, can Art please share the Seattle Times article for each governor candidate that he referenced?
Yeah, I mean, we'll give it, you can watch it. Each candidate did 108 minutes. Semi Bird, Bob Ferguson, Dave Reichert, Mark. But
Well, and I'll say Como News has one, if you got less time than our does. Our Arches is.
I'm sure it's
Como News did one that was like an hour long, where they basically did about 15 minutes with each candidate. And I thought the Como News one was by a guy named Chris Daniels for Como.
Okay.
And they have this special out right now saying, hey, here's an hour commercial free. These are the 4 main candidates for governor. You can see what they said to his questions. And he didn't tell us his questions in advance. So it was all unscripted. You went in and you had to come up with answers, whatever he asked you, sort of thing. That's a good one if you want to see some samples.
There's another one, Colette is on Zoom, but she messaged this, it's very wordy, so let me try to clearly state this. So can you ask Mr. Mullet if he plans to meet with the Washington Education Association to be vetted and request endorsements? Office is in Federal Way. President of WEA is Larry Delaney. Educators impacted by this crisis as well, impacting our students, families, schools, communities as well. Current legislation, funding cuts limits how schools respond to drug impacted students, possession of drugs on campus. Schools have Narcan on sites, but only 1 to 2 staff trained to administer it. Drug and alcohol counselor positions eliminated, so drug assessments, referrals for treatment, follow-up, case management not occurring systematically at all. So the building principals, administrators suspend the impacted students, police fault if in possession, they miss class instruction, rinse, repeat, and increase the likelihood of dropout school to prison pipeline. And then reminds him that NEA is the largest union in the US. So if you can partner with WEA and NEA, their lobbyists can help push shared issues legislation forward in state and national level. There is not one industry that is not impacted by this crisis.
This is gonna get a little awkward because the WA is endorsed Bob Ferguson for governor. Even though Bob went to private school, his kids go to private school. My wife is a public school teacher. All 6 of my kids go to public school, but I have pushed back on some of their stuff because I think it's been a challenge because they, a lot of times their big focus every session is we need higher property taxes. And I'm like, people are getting priced out of their homes. So we have to find a different approach than just asking for higher property taxes every year. The school group I've endorsed by is the public school employees. That's very different, because that's the paraeducators. That's the other people in the school who are not certified teachers. And I think this is the challenge. The WA is a political powerhouse in Olympia. They are SEIU and WA are probably the 2 most powerful groups, I would say, in our state in terms of having influence over Democratic lawmakers. And I think for the public school employees, the paraeducators, they get a little frustrated because they feel like the certified teachers have all the political clout, they get all the benefits, and then the paras end up not getting their fair share. So I think I've been endorsed by the paraeducators because I think I've tried to have a more holistic view of every adult in the school, of the role they play. I think on the mental health, public safety front, and this is, if you look at the Garfield shooting that happened, last month. I was really vocal about this, and I think it was a huge mistake that they made in the Seattle School District. After defund the police, I was running for my Senate seat in 2020. They got rid of all the school resource officers in the school. That was with their attempt to defund the police in the Seattle School District was all those school resource officers were eliminated. So you take Garfield High School. They had a guy who had worked there for over a decade. He had amazing relationships with kids. Actually felt like these school resource officers were actually convinced students that police aren't all evil and bad, that you can actually, they're there to help support the community and they can be there to help support you. And so, you look at the school shooting in Garfield, I think is less likely that whole incident would have happened because it was around kids having a fight. If the school resource officer is still in the school, and so at some point, Seattle School District's gonna have to raise their hand, the same way I did on that police pursuit thing, and be like, you know what? Families, we screwed up, like, we shouldn't have gotten rid of the school resource officers, because they were actually playing a really positive role in our public school system, and we gotta get them back. And so this will be kind of a come to Jesus moment, I think, for some of these schools going forward is, do they admit they made a mistake and they got rid of the police officers actually being in the high school to establish relationships with these kids at a very critical juncture in their life? And I, you know, for our Zoom viewer, if there was a way, I would have loved, I mean, I would have, if the WA was willing to support me, that would have been great. But like I said, I think it's, I've got a ton of support from actual teachers. Because I find teachers, like I go to my wife's school and, yeah, I think they want to have some flexibility to teach kids in the classroom and not feel like they're spending all their time in bureaucracy and meetings and misery. They just want to say, hey, I became a teacher because I love kids and I want to teach them. And someone just please let me focus on that and not focus on going all these things, you know, a lot of focus, obviously, diversity, equity, inclusion. There's a lot of focus on things where teachers are like, I just want to teach. And it would be really nice to go back to giving me some flexibility to focus on doing that in the classroom. So that's why I have support from actual teachers. But yeah, the WEA has been a more challenging organization for me because I have always publicly supported charter schools. And we have 17 great public charter schools in the state of Washington right now. They're getting great outcomes for low-income families of color, but they're not unionized. And so the WEA, I've always been on their naughty list because I'm one of the Democrats who supported public charter schools, and that's never been the WEA's position. And Bob Ferguson doesn't support charter schools because, and that's why he's endorsed by the WEA and I'm not. And so that's just, you know, that's, I made my own bed there. I'm happy to sleep in it. But that is the reality if the Zoom viewer is wondering why I'm never going to get the WA's endorsement. It's around the public charter school issue.
By the way, Mark, I think that for me, just as is an opinion, I think we go the wrong direction when we start bringing more counselors and more Narcan and more stuff to the schools. I don't think it's the job of a teacher to worry about people's drug addiction. I think that's for treatment. I think that when a kid is found to be using drugs on that campus and having a problem with drugs, they should be removed from that campus and go get the help they need and come back when they're ready and come back when it's okay. And maybe bring the school, the learning to them. But I don't think that cops should become drug and alcohol counselors and social workers. I don't think that that's their job. I think cops signed on to fight crime. And I think teachers signed on to teach. And I think that we just contaminate. They went to Green River. I was asked to come to Green River, and they didn't like it because they came and they wanted to have me bring an office on or whatever they wanted us to do. And they were talking about people on drugs coming into our resource office, and I was like, "We're gonna bring this to a campus?" And I go, "No. What we should do is if you find out that someone's having a problem with drugs, they should be removed from the campus and go get help. They shouldn't be trying to like contaminate the rest of the school or bring it around or any of that kind of stuff." And I think we need to isolate someone that's struggling with drugs and bring them into a community where they can get help. And so whenever I hear that we're bringing this stuff into, I remember going to high school. If you were caught using drugs, you had to go do something.
Yeah.
That was how it was, and it was pretty good. And so I don't understand that kind of thinking of turning cops into social workers and having them out there with a guy naked in a fountain and you know, and then hiring that as like, no, just arrest him. Just arrest him and then take him and then he can get the help. You know, I don't, anyways.
So Art, along that, Laura and I went to a Mariner game a week ago. We were in downtown Seattle and I saw something we'd never seen down there.
Did we score any runs that game?
Yeah,
we did win. Okay, you're in good luck, Charlie.
Not against the Blue Jays.
Yeah. That was the one we won against the Blue Jays.
Yeah. So we're walking to the game and here's a guy outside a storefront, obviously in distress, addict. Two cops are around him, talking to him, and all of a sudden the van pulls up. Seattle Social Services, two social workers get out they have a discussion with the cops. The cops say, okay, they hand the guy off to the social workers, they put him in the van, the cops get in their car and drive away, and the social services van drives away. And we went, wow, that's how it's supposed to work. When they defunded the police, they were supposed to fund the other half of it with the social services that never got funded.
Well, I would wonder where they took him.
Well, I don't, that's a good question, you know?
They probably took him out to eat.
Yeah, but then, so then we keep walking, another van pulls up, different van, and they drop the guy off at the Union Gospel Mission.
Yeah.
Pulled him out and walked him in, and so we're like, well, we've never seen that. You always see cops, so you can just see addicts just in distress, and that's all there is, so. I don't know, maybe we're turning a better.
Well, I think Seattle, like I'm endorsed by Seattle City Council President Sarah Nelson. Like, we are aligned on this issue. Sarah Nelson and Davidson, the current city attorney, like, they are doing everything they can, I think, to try to change the trajectory of where Seattle has been going. And it's not happening overnight, but I'm telling you, they're not part of the problem. They are attempting to be part of the solution.
Well, and that's from tremendous pressure from Andrea Suarez. And
Yeah, Andrea's been great.
Andrea's powerhouse, and she's making the move down there, and those council people are listening to her. Both of those people even stand.
She's running for the legislature.
Yeah.
Every third, you know, she gets through. I've endorsed Andrea Suarez for the legislature. Great.
Can you address, these automobiles that are homes and how they're being handled? We just had an incident the other day where a police officer couldn't do anything because it was the person's home and he was instructed not to touch it.
So I'll tell you, the best example I've found of this was in the city of Wenatchee, and I met with the mayor of Wenatchee, but he's no longer the mayor, but you know, when he was the mayor. Wenatchee bought a couple lots, like their cars, because Wenatchee was fed up with all these people just parking wherever and living in their vehicles. And so they actually bought 2 lots, but they had, all they had there, they had garbage service and they had porta potties, basically bathrooms. And they told the people, we are not gonna let you park here on the street. You have to go to this lot. And if you don't go to the lot, you will be towed, but we're giving you a place where you can go, where you will be safe, you will have bathrooms, and you can have your garbage disposed of. And the Wenatchee mayor told me it worked. And so I actually funded one of these lots in our last capital budget for Seattle. Because you can't just, like, I go down Martin Luther King Way in Seattle. And it's like it'd be a row of RVs that look like they're from, I mean, I was born in 1972, and these RVs look like they're older than I am. And so, yeah, it's like stuff out of Breaking Bad RVs. I mean, so it's there's a real opportunity there, I think, for cities to kind of follow that Wenatchee model where you don't give them the option to stay there, but you do say you can go here. But then then to me, it provides, makes enforcement really easy to just not allow these vehicles to be parked on streets. So they all seem to congregate on certain streets where you'll see 12 or 13 vehicles in a row. And because for whatever reason, I think they just found a street where the neighbors aren't going to complain.
Well, that, in the way that we define that working. It works on a NIMBY perspective. You know, not in my backyard. But on the other hand, you have now a drug den.
Yeah.
And now, and by the way, I challenge it, because if you tell me you funded a lot, and then I go, hey, Bill Wiggins and Chris Stursh and Allison Zimmerman and Garrett Tones, we're all gonna buy new RVs. Let's stop our homes, let's sell them, and let's move our RVs to this lot. And we will just live there in our brand new RVs. Now the cops will come down and say, you guys need to be using drugs. This RV is way too nice to be in this lot. So, you know, on the level that it's working like that, but if I take my RV and it doesn't have broken windows and it's not from 72, and I park mine in the Walmart, somebody tells me to move. See, they can tell me to move. If I want to go live right now on the street of Kent and just park on the side, and I have a brand new RV, and I sit some lawn chairs out, they're gonna come right away and tell me to move. So now, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna sit there, they're gonna tell me to move, and I'm gonna go, do I need to smoke fentanyl? And they're gonna say, yes, you need, that's the craziness of this. They're gonna tell me, yes, Art, please get some foil, get some tarps on these windows, get these tires flattened and start smoking some fentanyl and you can stay.
But I'm gonna give our Supreme Court a little credit. Our Supreme Court that did the Blake decision that caused all my misery. They actually came out with a ruling this week to provide flexibility to remove vehicles that people claim in that exact scenario you just described. Our Washington State Supreme Court actually came out acknowledging that we have to have the ability to prevent that from what's happening wherever people want.
Well, we're also in lieu of that, talking about that, we're also in the midst of the Grant Pass decision right now, right?
Yeah, and the Grants Pass decision, I think, at the national level was really positive.
But right now, are we waiting on the Supreme Court?
No, they ruled you have flexibility.
Yeah.
Like you can remove.
Now you
People
no
are doing
longer-
homeless encampments on public spaces, you are now allowed to remove them based on that Supreme Court decision.
But by the way, Seattle doesn't want this.
They do not.
They do not want this.
Well, but
They
Sarah
want it.
Nelson does.
Sarah Nelson.
So there are people that do in
Yeah.
Seattle who are now in a position of influence,
Yeah.
and so that's positive.
Okay, so along that line, I have a question. Why, when state services are provided, state or government services of any source, why aren't we requiring sobriety?
We should be.
And,
So
and
you
that-
are 100% accurate.
and it goes with, I'm fine, buy a lot, put them there, help them out. And why are we not demanding and requiring UAs? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, that was, we mentioned Andrea as far as when I did my walk around with We Heart Seattle, this was last fall. And she took me into some of the state affordable housing buildings that I've helped pay for. And holy crap, that was an eye-opening experience because we walked in, you could smell, to be honest, this shows me, the 51-year-old Tyler in this spot,
The square.
that I had never smelled fentanyl until Andrew Suarez took me into a building that the state had paid for affordable housing, where people were clearly just in there using
Or they
fentanyl.
can ask them, like my cousin's Casey McNerney, he's a reporter for Cairo News. And we're opposite politically, but we have this discussion and I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to me that they will ask them to go off campus in order to smoke their fentanyl, but then they're welcomed back and they have their free housing and they can continue to live there. There should be a consequence. Sobriety on or off. You're not helping, you're not moving yourself forward as a productive member of society. So as a productive member of society, I'm perfectly fine to pay my taxes, which I do. And if I don't, I get penalized. So I am confused why my dollars go to something where someone is allowed to break the law and deteriorate society exponentially with no consequence. And I'm supposed to just continue to give.
Yeah.
No, and this is, I think, when Angie referenced in the bio, I completely agree with you. There should not be a single penny of taxpayer dollars that go to enable people to continue to use drugs, not a single penny. But we should be stepping up financially for anybody who does want to beat their drug addiction. The reason they don't beat their addiction shouldn't be a financial hurdle. Maybe there's other hurdles involved there, but the hurdle for them beating their addiction should not be a financial one. And I could not agree more with everything you're saying.
As someone with resources, I send my child to Utah, where in order for my insurance to help her get coverage, they diagnose her with dual diagnoses. So now she's on top of being just kind of a pill and not wanting to obey rules and demands inside our home. Now she's this, and this. So now she's identifying as all these things.
Mhm.
And this child who comes from a privileged home is now fully confused. And it isn't until I out of pocket say, all right, you know what, I'm done with all of these dual diagnoses. You take her and you see how you do, because I'm fed up. And in 90 days, we went from total distortion to okay, I don't like you and I think you're crazy, but I'm willing to buy into this guy arc. Fine, that's fine. That's fine. But if I didn't have the resources to pay for this, where does this come from? My insurance won't pay for this. There's no state funding. There's no
I think
help for
this
me,
is
and
where-
it's the fact that my husband is willing to work and work 100 more hours to make sure that our kids are provided for.
not everyone has the resources that I have. That's not fair.
I think there's an opportunity, like you say, it's if we quit spending taxpayer dollars to enable people to use drugs, we're gonna be putting up money that can help people beat addiction. That's simple.
Yeah, that's pretty simple.
That's just too much common sense.
Okay, don't try to claim you're not crazy. No.
I did my own.
Did you just call you a bill in front of you? That's how we do it. That was kind of awkward now in hindsight, okay.
But I don't know, I turned 18, I'm like the new version of like voters, right? I'm a registered voter now, haven't voted yet, but how like. In schools, you know, we're like, until, you know, I came to art, everyone's like, oh yeah, fuck your parents. You know, oh yeah, like this stuff, like screw the police, screw authority, all this stuff, like. You know, how are you going to meet my generation who are now all gonna be able to check boxes on the ballot and make a decision on why respecting some form of authority is, you know, a good idea and why they shouldn't just say, hey, you know, laws, all this stuff, like, how are you gonna meet this target?
These crazy kids.
First off, I have 6 kids. I have an 18, 19, 20, and 21-year-old at the moment. And so I'm in the ages. Caroline and Bellamy, my younger 2 are 14 and 15. But so I am experiencing, I think, the challenges I think that youth in the state are going through on a daily basis. I will say a big reason why I'm running is I want my own kids to be able to live here. And this is my wife and I's anxiety is, you know, my wife's dad went to Garfield, my dad went to Foster High School in Willow. Our parents have been here for generations. My oldest daughter is a senior up at Western Washington, Bellingham, and we don't know how the hell Isabel's gonna afford to actually live in the Puget Sound region after she finishes school next June. And to me, this is the wake-up call that we're doing what other places have done on the West Coast. We're gradually making things so expensive to live that average families just can't stay here. And so my message, like, you know, obviously our house has a large number of 18 to 20-year-old kids there on any given day because everyone just kind of hangs out there. And I say to them, this is hopefully the message that resonates is affordability for that generation should be the #1 issue. They want to have somebody in the governor's office who has a lens of affordability when we're doing public policy because, you know, some of these, like if you work right now, like you get, you know, 0.58% of your paycheck is taken out for the long-term care payroll tax. That's an SEIU bill. SEIU, the largest political donor to Democrats in the state of Washington. That's the only reason that bill became law is because they write giant campaign checks. And you know who it's screwing over? It's screwing over every single member, the younger generation, because they're not going to see a penny of that. Like they're not going to see a penny of it. And so this is, you know, having a governor change where you have this affordability lens, you know, take climate change. Like Ensley right now says, anyone complain about climate change doesn't, you know, if they're complaining about the price of gas, they're a climate change denier. Well, that's a load of crap. Like I know a lot of people that care about climate change, but they also care about the price of gas because how else are they supposed to get to and from work? And so Ensley has created this false narrative that hopefully the younger generation realizes they shouldn't be stuck with that choice. Like you can fight climate change without having the highest gas prices in America. And so there's all these things that we're doing right now that make our state unaffordable. And this is where I think our younger generation is really getting hit. And the final one I'll mention for the younger generation is housing. Because, you know, I chair the state construction budget. Our permit process in our state does not work. It's not predictable and it's not quick. And because our permit system is not predictable or quick, it costs a crap load of money to build anything in the state of Washington. And when it costs that much money to build something, you know who gets screwed? The younger generation, because now they can't afford to buy a home. And so these are the things that we want our state to be affordable. We have to start being honest, intellectually honest with ourselves about what is the government doing that drives up the cost of living in the state of Washington. And right now, it's doing a lot of things to drive up the cost of living in the state of Washington. And if the younger generation, I think, my hope is in the next 8 days, you can help with this, is it'd be nice for people to appreciate that. Like for the younger generation, some of the older people, like I can afford to live here. You know what? I've had a job and My wife gets paid really good money now as a teacher, I'll be honest, like, we've substantially increased teacher pay in the last 7 years. And so my wife and I can afford to live here, we're gonna be okay, it's our kids. We're gonna be in trouble if we don't change how we're
Well,
doing.
there's always a lot they could park their car on, so.
But it is a challenge, and I'll say, of my friends, like I ask my kids' friends when they're over, like, have you ever voted in a primary election before? Their answer, every single one of them, is never, never. So tell your 18-year-old friends, the election that matters is the primary election. Like, they'll get a ballot in 8 days, and they can be the first time that you have 18-year-olds actually voting in the primary. Because what happens right now is they all want to vote for president, because they think that's the only election that matters. That election does matter, but it's not the only one that matters. And to be honest, the primaries are actually really important, because you then determine who's going to most likely win in November. And so this election is really important, hopefully, for younger people to realize, because if every 18 to 25-year-old actually filled out and voted for the candidate who's gonna make our state more affordable, I'd probably get in the top 2 of the primary. But statistically speaking, those 18 to 25-year-olds don't vote in primaries. And so we'll see what happens.
So as a, and we're getting close to it. Okay. Oh, no, go ahead, Becky, first, and then I'll close.
Well, I was just gonna getting back to mandating treatment. And I've seen on a couple of community groups, and one of them is opioid task force in Cruz County. And as far as I can tell, what they're talking about as far as mandating treatment is just medicated assisted.
Oh, MAT.
Yeah, well, they're calling it MOU. I don't know what it's in for, but gotta add another letter in there, don't you?
Yeah.
Anyway. So if we're talking about mandating it, don't we have to also specify what kind of treatment? Because if you're just putting, if somebody in the doctor just putting someone on Suboxone, that's really not gonna solve the problem. We have had guys here tell me that they'll just take more fentanyl and override it, one thing, and then they can take any other drug and it doesn't matter. So without, I mean, in my view anyway, without inpatient treatment for someone who has an addiction problem, I don't see that solving anything. And is this any kind of discussion that you've had? Anybody in the state legislature?
I'm surprised, because Pierce County, I served with Pierce County Executive Bruce Danmeyer. I would have thought he would have been more in line with kind of what I'm hearing in the room around focusing more on helping people beat addictions, but is it the Pierce County Council?
Pierce County Health Department.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, what you're describing, I assume would have been a King County perspective. I'm a little
Yeah,
bit surprised to hear Pierce County
It's
perspective.
the perspective, on the.
It's not real harm reduction.
Right, it's just harm reduction only. Like if I were to go to a tabling event, I could talk about recovery.
Really?
No, only evidence-based harm reduction. So yeah, it's very hard to sit in these meetings for me, because there's really no discussion about it. And I mean, I can tell there's other people that are interested in talking about recovery, because it's a education and prevention subcommittee. But what they're talking about is, just how to help kids learn to use their drugs more safely.
And how to teach us to destigmatize.
Well, that platform is.
That's where you guys went wrong. You didn't even get the use drug safety class? None of you guys?
Okay. But
Well, so-
making that distinction, I think anybody going out and say, oh yeah, I'm for drug treatment, I wanna know what kind of drug treatment. That they are.
And so I think. This is what my experience will be. I go back to the Blake decision where. Like, I had somebody come into my Senate office, tell a story similar to yours, which was the only time my kid got clean was when. They were in jail for a period of time where they got sober and clean. That story really resonated with me, because it was told to me face to face from someone who had actually gone through that lived experience. Like your story that you're sharing, I would really encourage people, reach out to your legislators who are in Olympia representing and specifically try to target the Democrat legislators. And it's like these stories, when people tell them, it kind of goes against kind of the group thing on the far left, which like I think like you guys are using all the same buzzwords, right? It's got to be evidence-based and basically these things, and I think. Do not underestimate people in this room. I'm gathering here that everyone seems to have had some pretty personal connections with people with substance abuse challenges. Do not underestimate, when you tell that story, to elected officials in Olympia, I would encourage people, do it during the interim, because we're in session the first 4 months of the year. What happens from January to April is, I get like 100 meeting requests. Like my first year, I said, let's do every meeting for a half hour, and at the end of that week, I go, what's that list? And my chief of staff is like, those are the people you never met with, because, you know, we don't have enough slots. So I switched to the 15-minute meetings because I wanted to get through the whole list. So when you're in session, you lay out 15 minutes to explain what is a very complicated situation, right? But when you schedule that meeting with your local elected official, and it's not in the middle of session, you can have a half hour, 45-minute, sometimes even an hour-long conversation, and they can actually really start to understand the perspective, which I don't think anybody's going to be in a better place to share than people like this in this room. And you can actually have a real, I think, positive influence about how the state views these issues going forward, because I think you're highlighting something that's very true. Yeah, this is what we hear, evidence-based, like this is what we have to do, like this is, the science is clear. And I've had those people from the health departments in my office telling me I was nuts when we had the mandated treatment part of our original Senate bill for 5536. They referred to me as the Antichrist, that I just wasn't understanding the science of how this works. And to be honest, I think you guys can help combat that with kind of your different perspective on these issues.
We do have one more, it's super important. I hope Melissa Moss is still on Zoom, and then you'll have 10 minutes, so it goes up. But Melissa Moss, are you familiar with the House Bill 1227, which does not put the children's well-being first and allows a parent in active addiction to have custody of that child? If so, what can we do to change that to keep a child safe?
When did I'm trying to remember, what, did she know what year did she?
I got some years. I just read about it after she messaged
House
me.
Bill.
I think it's new.
It's recent. I was just reading about it too, and
Yeah, I read it. 21, 22.
okay, 21-22.
That's when it passed,
No, that's
or
the
it didn't pass.
House Bill 2020.
She's trying to type. I just can see. We get on this.
Past April 15th.
Can we get her?
Well, let's do it. I would, but Art has my number, and so it'd probably be easier for me. I can follow up with her
Okay, that'd be great.
offline to
Yeah,
figure
yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Yes, because I'd be happy to look at that in more detail. I'm trying to think.
She's all.
So we had a bill this session that I voted for. They didn't get to the finish line of the House around removing kids if they're in a house with somebody using fentanyl
Yeah.
because of the negative impact it has on the kid. And even just trace exposure can sometimes be fatal. And the Senate passed that bill, it went to the House and then it died. But this bill sounds like it was from a previous session. And it's something different. And I did see the gentleman back there had a question.
I was wondering, just one. Sorry about this, one thing I was wondering, how come people in recovery and stuff don't really count much for evidence?
For what?
For evidence-based.
Oh. Well, I think your stories. I think they can be really effective in Olympia. I think, like I said, I think your best window of time is what we call the interim. When you're not actually in session, like most people, like all the groups that get together, they always lobby during session. So they'll have a lobby day where they all show up on the Hill, they all split up, they go to the different legislators, they all do their 15-minute meetings. And I actually think groups can be a lot more effective by not having a lobby day during session, but actually during interim, having longer conversations where you can sit down and get into more detail about your lived experience. Because your lived experience, to me, I can say this honestly, would be a lot more impactful than hearing some guy from the Department of Health tell me what I should be doing. And so take advantage, because it seems like everything I've heard so far, everyone's like extremely articulate about explaining why they feel the way they feel on these issues. And that's a powerful thing in the legislative process, is to share those stories.
So. We have a group of people here, we have roomfuls of people, and this is not just tonight, this is every night. Every night in this room, the people that come here, we all talk about accountability. We talk about how there needs to be it, we talk about how to get people help through accountability. And that's parents and the people, is there anyone here arguing with the fact that drug addicts should be held accountable, any of the recovering addicts in this room? So none of us are arguing. So nobody affected by it is arguing accountability. Nobody's saying that we're being treated disproportionately racist. Nobody's saying anything like this. Now, and I'm saying this to the people at home, the people that are in the private groups. I'm saying this, that I don't agree with the right and left on almost any, I mean, I don't choose a side, I don't have a side. And we've had a war on our private group. As soon as we announced that you were here, then somebody said, well, why isn't Ferguson coming? And why isn't this person here yet? And how dare you? What are Art and Angie, Republicans, or what are they, Democrats? What are they? And we are looking at issues. And so we're nothing. We didn't come here to talk about abortion tonight. We didn't come here to talk about anything. We came here to talk about this issue. Now, if you were to tell us who is our enemy in the state Senate for accountability, who is the person that is against us? Who is the side that's against us?
Senator Montgomery, Chair of the Law and Justice Committee.
So she is a left-wing.
Well,
What was your answer?
I think Senator Montgomery, the Chair of the Law and Justice Committee, who I consider to be the person who's an obstacle to everything you guys.
So everything we're for, and this person is a Democrat.
She's a Democrat,
And she is progressive.
Yes.
Progressive.
She chairs the Law and Justice Committee, which is where these issues flow through. And yeah, I think she is, but she was, when the Blake decision happened, she was ecstatic. She thought it was a really good shift.
And she has a following that also believes in the same thing she believes.
Yeah. And so I think it's challenging, and I'm not saying Monica's not a nice person. Like, I sent her a Christmas card.
Yeah.
I like her family, I like her kids, I like her husband. I'm saying this isn't about
On
her,
this particular issue.
but on this issue, she has a completely different perspective. And in her perspective, like when I'm fighting these issues in Olympia, she's my adversary. You know, obviously Puffer is as well, but I'm saying in the Senate, like she's the one who I usually really have to put a lot of effort in to try to figure out a way through.
So as a self-proclaimed moderate Democrat, fiscal responsible, most of your troubles in passing the bills that you want to push through are from your own party.
Yes. That is 100% accurate. And I shouldn't say that in public.
But then, so my next question is, what makes you a Democrat? What are the issues that you do agree on?
It's women's reproductive rights, it's marriage equality. Climate change is real.
Yeah.
I may disagree with Ensley of how we fight climate change, you know, I want to fight it with the lens of affordability. And yeah, I'm not supporting Donald Trump. And so, you know, I was the first person legislature actually endorsed Joe Biden. And also was the first person legislature to say Joe Biden can't complete a sentence right now, and I don't think he should be running for president anymore. I really would like to see a switch on that front. Hopefully that happens in the next 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
But
well, then let me ask you this.
Marriage equality, like marriage equality was on the ballot in 2012 when I ran for the Senate. That was the big difference between me and my Republican opponent. Is I was supporting the initiative, so we gave people to get married. He was opposing that initiative, and that just my Republican opponent in 2012.
Okay.
Because that was the year the initiative was in front of Washington voters, and it was really clear to me to say to Washington voters, this is why I'm a Democrat. Is I think gay people should be able to get married, and I think my 4 daughters should have access to women's reproductive health care no matter what.
Right.
Like, I don't want the state telling my kids, and it was really frustrating when Eloise graduated from high school. She was looking at Boise State, and she was, Dad, I don't even want to go to Boise State because I got raped in Boise State. I couldn't even go get an abortion. And I was like, you know what? And so she crossed it off the list, and I was like, you know what? That's screwed up. Like, for the last 50 years, there's never been a time where a woman had to look at what the state laws were when they picked their college, when it came to women's reproductive health care. So it really bothered me that now my daughters, I still have 2 more daughters coming, they're gonna go to school, are gonna have to get on Google and figure out what the hell the laws are in these states, and it pisses me off. But, you know, I've always felt I can convince Democrats to understand fiscal issues easier than I can convince Republicans to understand social issues.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when you are socially liberal and fiscally conservative, you are politically homeless.
You don't fit.
And so it's and it is what it is. I mean, you're just politically homeless. But I think there's a lot of us that are politically homeless, to be honest. I just hope they all vote in 8 days.
I think vast majority of people in their camp, they are fiscally conservative and they are socially liberal. But the problem I have and the frustration I've had, even in this discussion tonight, is you're almost demanding that people identify themselves as something. I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican. And when you do that, you only need one issue to divide that person from the rest of the crowd. And there's these hot button items now. I don't really have a different opinion on abortion than you do, but that's a hot button item. I only need that one item that's discount everything else about some other person. I just object to this Democrat, Republican. That there's a need to keep it doing. And I just think it puts up a wall immediately for drug addiction, for any of the really important issues that we have. Because as soon as you say you're one of them or the other, and you know somebody, 50% of the people on this.
Well, and it's,
And I think that's for me as a voter and somebody dealing with this, our family, that's a super big frustration.
well, and I think
It turns me off.
and I think you're bringing up a really good point, because I say to people, I've been in the Senate for 12 years, I've added up how many votes I've taken in those 12 years. Between committee votes and floor votes, I've taken over 10,000 votes. Like, there's no chance in hell even my own wife agrees with how I voted 10,000 times. And so everybody can find a reason to find a vote that you've taken or they disagree with you. Like, pickleball is currently our state sport. I was one senator that voted against pickleball being our state sport. Because you know why? Because I'm a tennis player. You know, on the courts. And so there is every person there, you can find something of why you're not voting for them. But at the end of the day, people have to go back and just say, what's their moral compass? Like, how do they look through issues? Like, at the end of the day, you're never going to find any elected official you agree with 100% of the time.
But I don't hear elected officials trying to include people with issues rather than identify.
Party affiliation.
While we
Well,
were
I'm
sitting
saying, you
here,
know what, I'm a Democrat, but this is what
Oh, did I just piss off the pickleball
while we were
body?
sitting here, I got a text. This is Dave Reichert. My opponent is lying to you. I've never voted to ban abortion and won't change any abortion laws as your governor. I don't know how I got this.
Really?
Thanks the whole time.
At 7:39, this is the text
I
I
don't,
get.
I don't think I once mentioned Dave Reichert.
He didn't mention Dave Reichert.
No, I just think it's interesting. So I'm getting these texts.
Oh, he's probably talking about Bob Ferguson.
Yeah, maybe.
Because Bob Ferguson runs ads every day, like,
So, but I find it
Yeah.
interesting that
There's
this
nobody that we don't know.
yeah, no. Then you got a, like
a
a
mass text.
spam.
Oh,
text.
mass text.
She got a spam text. Yes. You're like, wow.
As a voter and a fairly.
Oh.
I get told all day.
Well, okay, let's,
Wait, I have one last one over here.
yeah.
This is just, for instance. If Trump becomes president. Will you be able to work with him?
I work with everyone in the left, yes, so I will work with whoever you need to work with to solve problems. And so I chair the state construction budget with the Republican counterpart. We find agreement on how we're gonna invest that $4 to $5 billion every year. And that's what I've learned how to do and finding bipartisan solutions. Not an option, I think it should be a requirement, and so no matter what happens, I can work with it and we will see how it goes. Just because I'm not gonna vote for him doesn't mean I want to work with him Let's go.
Okay, so now let me ask you this. This is hot seat.
You're going off the rails.
Now,
The seat's been really cool. I feel it's getting warmer.
as somebody who endorsed Joe Biden. Did you just figure out that he was mentally incompetent at the debate?
So, this was tough, because Biden came to Green River Community College in April of 22.
Yeah.
And I went to Green River to see him speak, just because I had been the first person to endorse him. Granted, when I endorsed Biden in 2019, it was Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders.
That's true.
To me,
That's true. Yeah.
they're not my kind of Democrats.
Yeah.
Those are the super lib side,
Yeah.
and they're the Bob Ferguson side.
Yeah.
I was like, Joe Biden is my kind of Democrat, more in the middle.
Well, he was competent a little bit at that point.
But I went to the Green River event in 22, and I actually was asked publicly on the Brandy Cruz show, like, did you see cognitive decline? And I said, yes. It was really disturbing, because I was nervous. And oh my gosh, I got annihilated for saying that, like annihilated. I was to the point where people are like, how dare you say anything like that?
Right.
And I feel a little bit more vindicated now, that at least I was willing to be honest with people when I was asked a critical question. I could have dodged it, but I think people are just sick and tired of elected officials just dodging questions. That's the default. You're trained to do it.
Is it your opinion that he should step down at this point?
I think he should not. He has to get out of the race. After the debate, like my mom has Alzheimer's. This is a tough thing. And, my dad passed away in 2017. So once my dad passed away, we were interacting with my mom on a really regular basis. My brothers and I started to notice the cognitive decline. We had to put her in a facility in April. But what I've seen from our president is very similar cognitive challenges gradually over time, where you can tell it's harder and harder to find the words you want to say, harder and harder to have the thoughts flow coherently. And so I just think really strongly that it is time for him to step down and let somebody else, take the Democratic Party into the 2024 election cycle. We'll see what happens. I think if I was in Vegas right now at the betting window, I think there's gonna be, I think he'll end up stepping down. I think it'll be a big giant political earthquake when it happens, but I do think he will step out of the race in the next week or two. I've been wrong before. We'll see what happens.
I wanna say that there's both good and bad that we've. One of the things that I wanna say that I'm disappointed in, from all the Senate.
Is that a group for your ice cream?
No, I gotta chill on that. No, one of the things that I'm disappointed in is that it seems to be a fundamental lacking understanding of the bills that you guys are passing. It seems to be that you guys really must be doing so much work, and there must be so many laws going through on so many different issues that you can't possibly even understand what it is that's going on. The lack of understanding about Ricky's Law and the people that don't know what was going on with that, and sitting here as we've seen every Republican candidate or every moderate Democrat candidate come out and try to say we want mandated treatment. They are sitting there saying that, forgetting that the Democrats invented it. They did. The liberals invented mandated treatment. They're the first ones that say, we as a family want to mandate treatment on you. They said it first. So now people are coming out and having a problem saying, we want mandated treatment. You're worried about saying that because somebody's going to cancel you. And you know that, and somebody's going to attack you for saying that. And you're going to say they're taking people. But we forgot that we passed the whole bill in 2018 that was mandating treatment. We forgot that.
Asked by the person who is most opposed to mandated treatment on the.
Exactly right. And so that's just one of the things I want to criticize is I want to say this is kind of shocking as I'm getting to know people. The little bit of memory, just I asked about the Pill Press Act that Inslee put his thing in, and you didn't really know that one. And to me, it's like, wait, do you guys not know what laws you're passing? Like, this is crazy. And if you do pass a law that is going to help us, shouldn't we know about it? Shouldn't we hear about it, know how to utilize it? And if you're going to pass a law that says you could, how are you going to notify the drug dealers that you just let them know that you passed a pill press law? Well, you better notify it, because that's the people that need to know, and they don't know. And you didn't even get it out to normal people. So how are you going to get it out to the drug dealers? And so we're doing a very poor job at understanding the laws that we're passing, and then letting it and even making it comprehensible for a normal human being to even see what that means. And I think that that's our biggest, one of the biggest criticisms I have of what, you've been there for 12 years, you've done this. I wish I could get a little more knowledge of these bills and besides that, so, but on the other hand.
Let me just say, I agree with what you're saying. It's a valid criticism. I think you said it's a valid criticism, but it's a part-time legislature. I'm super transparent. I got elected, I made $42,000 a year. I currently make $59,000 a year. That is what you get paid
For 100 days of work, right?
Between the Senate and the House.
No, I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying you got 100 grueling days of work and.
Well, but I do it, I'm doing some, capital budget, like session ends in April, but I'm in Walla State Penitentiary.
Yeah.
Hanging out in Gary Ridgway's cell block, so you're doing stuff, I'm just saying but your criticism, I'm just acknowledging it, is valid.
Right.
People
I
are
just think we
passing a lot of laws without a full comprehension of what's in all this.
Or on a way to alert the public of what we've done.
Yeah.
And because we don't, and you can just hear people talk about fentanyl and then somebody's coming up. I just heard, I give Raul a little criticism. He was here and I asked him about an act that was currently going on. Yeah, and he's trying to put his new reinvention of the wheel, what his thing is, but he didn't see that they just had the Americans against, I can't even remember the name of it now, but it was one, and I asked him and he didn't know that one either. And so it was really tough that we're having new people come in and say, we're gonna pass this and we're gonna pass this, and we currently don't know what we've already passed. And for us to get educated, we already gotta know what's on the books first before we start asking someone to pass new laws, because it turns out the law might already be there. And might already have it. And it might have been passed by the same people that are now opposing it. So we better watch out, because I don't think they have a memory. So we really have to look at this.
I see Art getting a radio
Yeah.
John Curley should watch out. I was calling for John Curley's job.
One of the things that I would caution against that is that I can't listen to the radio anymore because all they do is complain. And I can't find a channel that has one goddamn idea. And I would have to do a radio show that had some ideas. And I would want to bring on people that had ideas. And I would want to talk about what we're doing, not what went wrong. I would want to talk about, and now I want to give you some real, we haven't heard, and I want you guys to kind of acknowledge, I don't know if any of you have ever heard a Democrat or a Republican say that they're having to fight their own party. And just try to challenge yourself to find one person that would even have the balls to say that. And Mark has said that tonight. He has said, yeah, the thing that my biggest obstacle is my own party, which is tough. And he is a person that seems to go, wait, I'm homeless here and this sucks. And it's made very hard for me to get elected, because all you'd have to do to really get elected is just to jump over to the far left and join them and say, I'm for everything. I want to defund the police and I want to let drugs be legal and I want to stop all this systematic racism, and he's got a shot.
I would have had no challenge in my 2020 senator.
Yeah. But I want to say that it's impressive to see that's, and I want to acknowledge that it is very impressive that he's doing that, and it takes courage. And I also believe that we need serious men to solve serious problems, and
or serious women.
Yeah, or serious women. Sorry. Yeah, that's true. Just happened to be, if I was interviewing a woman, I would have said woman. But to be honest, we need serious people to solve these serious problems. And if you're not serious enough to go over to the other side, and if you're not serious enough to fight your own party, then we can't have you around. And that seems to be, what it is to be not to be a grown up. And I gotta kind of admonish our own people that we're on this, our own private group, just battling just from the simple point of hatred for one side or the other, and say, shame on you. Shame on you. If you're a liberal and you're looking at this problem of no accountability for drug addiction, you need to talk to your own party. It isn't the conservatives that are not pushing things through. It is the liberal side, it is the Democrat side that really has this wrong. And that's true. Now, that doesn't make me a Republican. That doesn't make me a Democrat. That doesn't make me have a side. On this issue, these Democrats have it wrong. And they are hurting people. And the conservatives on this issue just don't have it wrong. They might be assholes, They might be mean, they might be judgmental, but they don't have it wrong. So.
And this was your point, right?
Yeah.
Is look at the issues, less part of
Yeah,
it.
it's just, we get off the topic so quickly through this identification of party.
Yeah.
Art's exactly right. Just remove those two words and talk about what's going on, and then maybe you're gonna find agreement on a whole lot more issues.
Well, and
We
I
just
just,
turn our listening off soon as we.
I think we're speaking to the choir here though with Mark.
There are.
I mean, I really think we are, and I think that, you know, I'm impressed with your ability. And if we need a moderate person to unify our state. We might have to look towards Mark, and that doesn't mean Battlefield's endorsing Mark Mullet. It doesn't mean anything like that. It's just saying choose for yourself. But we've seen some qualities that we don't really think are, I don't think he's faking it. So.
I'm not a good enough
For
actor.
addicts, it's easier for addicts and cheaper for addicts to go out and feed their addiction because fentanyl is everywhere. It's cheap. It is harder for me as even a struggling mom in a position, if I ever needed it, to feed my family, because I have to actually go stand in line at a food bank and hope that there's food behind that wall when I get there.
You haven't
I'm
heard?
25
Wait,
months.
Renee, you haven't heard?
What?
You can steal up to $1,000.
Oh.
Maybe you. I'm with you, we'll do it together.
God told me to downsize my fashion. He said, I said, yeah. And he said, you're a little too bougie, you can't sneak out because you know, I.
Oh, yeah.
But my point is, I have to go when I've needed it, and I have needed it. I'm not ever ashamed to say when I've needed it in any situation. I've had to stand in line. I've had to show my ID. I've had to prove I'm actually poor and maybe need a little help, and then hope that there's help behind the wall. But guess what? If I needed fentanyl, I don't have to stand in line. I can just go to any corner. Just in Federal Way alone,
Yeah.
I could have came out loaded and beat those guys that are trying to walk out of Walmart with a shopping cart.
Yeah.
It's cheaper than the groceries I'm trying to buy to feed my family.
That's good.
That should be unacceptable.
You're
Unacceptable.
old enough, you've made a couple references to your age, you're old enough to remember the term war on drugs.
Yeah. Nancy
It
Reagan,
seems like,
little egg,
it seems like that's
little egg frying.
nowhere in sight, and hasn't been for a long time. They use different words when they talk about this problem now, but it seems to me like we need to renew the push for a war on drugs, and that starts at the federal level, and it comes all the way down to the state and the local level. You know, and everybody in the political hierarchy needs to get on the same page and say, we're gonna solve this problem. There's really only one way to do it, and that is through force and enforcing laws that are already on the books, maybe making some new laws that are more stringent and enforcing the penalties for the people who are offending those laws. But it has to come from the top. And as governor, I'm interested to know what you would do, at the state level. It seems to me like that'd be week one. In week one of your term, you're gonna set the tone for how are you gonna deal with this problem on the state and local level in your state?
Yeah, you have to push the money out in that way that you're really prioritizing people being able to get access to treatment that is secure so they can actually be successful and defeated. I think that's your budget framework that you introduced to the legislature the first day of session in January of 2025. You're gonna take Ensley's budget and flush down the toilet. And you're gonna put your budget forward that has your priorities, and I think you can do that. And waiting for the federal solution, that's not, to me, you'll be waiting a long time. Like, you need to solve this locally right now in a way where people using drugs in public are getting put into treatment. And they're getting put into treatment
What
to
about
actually
the
have.
people selling the drugs and the people transporting the drugs?
Well, yeah,
into your
those
state?
people, I mean, but I don't
That's
think we
why
need,
it's gotta be the entire hierarchy, right?
we don't need. We just need to enforce the laws we have. Like, we have the laws for those people to be held accountable. It's just a question of prioritizing.
Well, it's also the question of what Riker did say, is we've took away money from cops. So we don't have the amount of task force that are targeting these cartels. We don't have that anymore, so the money has got to go to both sides. It's got to go to the supply side and attack the dealers, and we need cops for that. We need agents for that, and we need money to go to these people. We need to stop saying that we need less police, and we need to be able to say, hey, we're gonna need cops because that's who's gonna stop. Everyone wants a drug stop. Well, who's gonna stop it? What are we gonna just put together a bunch of moms? Yeah, the mob. They're gonna go out and, you know, I mean.
To go into a bathroom and film a girl because I know what fentanyl smells like, and they ask me, how do you know what fentanyl smells like? Well, I hate to say it, but you know, I've kind of been in the world here of kids who've been in this drug problem. There's a lady in Safeway, she's in the bathroom and she's smoking fentanyl. And I go out and say, she's in there smoking fentanyl. And they go, how do you know what fentanyl smells like? And then the cops come and they go, well, we can't do anything about it because we need probable cause. I have to go in the bathroom,
Right.
film a gal that I know is smoking fentanyl and explain why I know what it smells like. She's doing it. Here's your probable cause. And then they say she has to be doing it at the time.
No, too late. This video's too late. Yeah. Well, that's, again, Mark said with the budget, moving the money into the proper places, hopefully that things that happen. Last question, Mark, and this is one that I ask everyone, and this will probably be our hot seat tradition for people that are running for office. We want to know, and we want your word on what do you think what are you going to help us do if you don't get elected?
You know, he asked me this before. I made my tennis analogy there. As a tennis player, I never think about not winning the match. So I think it's tough to figure out because at this point in time, like I'm focused on getting in the top two. And if that doesn't happen, obviously my Senate position is up or out. So I'm not in the Senate. If I don't make it in the primary, that my time in the Senate is done because that seat got opened up when I ran for governor. And so I'm just gonna have some overall life decisions to make. I don't know what those.
Here's what I want to ask. Here's what I want. And here's what I think you could do. And I think that we need people that when they say win, they care deeply about issues and they want to win because they care deeply about these issues. And whether they get elected or not is irrelevant. And what I think you could do for us truly is we can out the people that are against us. And we're going to need you to do that. If the people that you struggle to get this, to hold addiction accountable, to do the things that were blocking you, we need to know those people and we need help contacting them and we need to get our voice heard with them. And we're going to need your help outing what is going on here and why. And to be honest, from our perspective, and maybe I'm crazy, but to be honest, the visceral virtue signal, the idea that somebody cares about a drug addict more than I do, or that cares more than their family, or that they are so protective, and this virtue signaling that's going on and saying, this is a baby bird and you guys all stay away from him and they're protected and they get to use all day and I'll bring them the foil and I'll bring them the pipe and you stay away and then all their crimes they get to commit and they get to live where they want to live and they get to do what they want to do. And we need that stop. And we need people that will stick up for us and that's what we need. And I think, to be honest, I say this all the time. I believe you could be more effective helping us if you don't get elected. And I truly believe that because once we get in this machine that we have seen.
For rumors, I'm trying to get people to vote for.
Yeah.
That's not the best. Well, we disagree.
Mark, to me, I really truly, I look at it both ways and anyways, I do say, I appreciate your heart. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate,
Remember, we're gonna have a Zoom at 10 a.m. next Friday.
Yeah, let's go. Get me on.
Yes, EHS. We're gonna put them in the hot seat.
Yeah.
We're gonna see how it goes.
I think they're full of shit. I'm gonna prove that this report that I'm reading is crazy. So anyway,
I've been bombarding Art with
yeah.
Olympia reports.
And I've been reading them, by the way. I've turned into a complete junkie over this shit. I just sit and read reports and watch 4 hours of government candidate videos and you know.
Now he's all pissed off. I told him we couldn't watch it on Como for an hour.
Yeah.
It's a-
And listen, I went strictly off the interview when I tell you this. If you look at all 4 of those interviews and you find a guy that's qualified to unite this state and organize and in charge of money and smart enough to say, we could pay for that and we can't pay for that. To me, I found it was Mark, and that was just from my experience of watching the videos. Again, that's not meaning I'm endorsing because we can't do Battlefield and we don't want to do that, but I want people to understand, at least that was a thought that I had, was this man was moderate and able to unite and then able to actually be responsible with what things cost, which is, I think, what we all want. So thank you for coming,
Hey,
Mark.
thanks a lot.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.